Members, it is the appointed time for the meeting and we have a quorum. Let me call the meeting to order. We have arranged for 4 hours of meeting to deal with 5 items on the agenda. I'd like to remind you that if you have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest relating to the items on the agenda to be processed, please, according to ROP 83A, to disclose the nature of such interest before you speak on the items. Item 1 on the agenda, FCR 2017-1851. This is for members to pass the PWSC recommendation held at this meeting on the 15th of November 2017, which has to do with the upgrading of 63 EG to Category A at an estimated cost of $810.9 million in money of the day prices for construction of a new academic building for the University of Hong Kong at Sassoon Road. A member has asked that this item be singled out for voting at the Finance Committee. The PWSC spent an hour 33 minutes on this item, and the administration has also provided an information paper. To answer questions on this item, we have Dr. Christine Choi, Undersecretary for Education, and her team. Welcome. Any members who would like to ask questions? Yes, number 1, Mr. Hui Chi-feng. 5 minutes. Thank you, Chair. We are very concerned about this Sassoon Road building. We have been waiting for the funding for very long. But if you look at the supplementary paper supplied by the administration to the committee, there are still some outstanding questions. First, the Li Ka-shing Fund and its donation to Hong Kong U. The $1 billion, you say, have been given in full to the university. What do you mean by given in full? And also you say that the university is responsible for formulating the timetable. Can I please have details? Undersecretary, can I defer to the University of Hong Kong to explain? Members, the Hong Kong U has received the full $1 billion from Li Ka-shing Fund. Well, actually, that happened quite a number of years ago. Second question, about the 2 valuable trees. The paper says that at this FC, you should give further details about the 2 valuable trees. Will they be preserved in situ? In other words, they will not be affected. Or are you going to explore into possible transplanting? And at the last meeting, you said that this is related to the exchange of land, but now is it still related? Professor Chan, Mr. Tam will take the questions. Thank you for the question. After the last meeting, the consultancy team and the site control staff of the university invited special landscape architects to do some on-site investigation of the 2 valuable trees. One of the trees, Pt1, is confirmed to be in quite a poor condition. And the tree has been damaged at a few places. Therefore, there is not a big chance for it to be preserved. The other one, T43, is a bigger tree. It spreads horizontally. It is a big tree, and since it spreads horizontally, it is quite difficult to transplant it. And there is again a slim chance for its survival. Therefore, after detailed assessment of the 2 trees, the chance of transplanting them and for them to survive is slim. Therefore, we will preserve the former consultant's proposal that these 2 trees will be felled. I'd like to get more information. You said they are not in good conditions or that it's not conducive to transplant them. But they are not sick. It is not that they are withering. If you don't touch them, they will continue to survive on this site, right? But here you are going to have this project, and since you can't move them, you are felling these two important or valuable trees as defined by the government. So is it really no chance for you to preserve them on site? Mr. Tam, it is not that they are so damaged that they are withering. It is not that they are not going to survive. It is because since there will be a project and also because we need to stabilize the slope, the trees will be affected. If you ask me, if there is a way to do something about them instead of felling them, I would say that we can try to see how whether these trees can be buttressed and consolidated as the works project goes on. But we can't say for sure that that can really be done at this stage. So the member is correct that at this stage we cannot guarantee that these trees can be preserved and so they can survive. Therefore, we would go for felling the trees. But if you ask me, we will try to see what can be done after works start. If we can coordinate works on site, we'll try to see whether we can preserve them. And we will only fell them when there is no way whatsoever to preserve them. Well, I would think that there is the more appropriate way. But at this stage, we dare not say that the trees can be preserved. Thank you very much for that very detailed answer. Mr. Ronick Chan, 5 minutes. Thank you, Chair. First, I support the building of this academic building at Sassoon Road, but I'd like to ask a few questions about the finances. The Open University also tried to build an academic building, but if you look at their estimates, they are quite similar. But the Open University only came here to borrow 50% of its architectural cost. And last year it completed tendering and they also did the foundation works. But here for this item, they started the tendering exercise in March last year, and it's only with our approval that they would award the tender. I'd like to know whether the tendering document is still valid because it's quite a long time ago. And compared to the tendering price, if there is a sharp rise, then what would you do? Because these are the prices as of September 2017. The price is going to be about $810.9 million, and it averages out to about $4,000 per square meter. And since there will be $53 million for furniture and equipment, and if you minus that, it would be about $3,700 per square meter. For Open University, it's just $3,600. So this one is a little more expensive. Is it because it has special architectural features, or is it that it has to do a more difficult foundation job? Number 3, the project will be completed in the 3rd quarter of 2021, and we will have to give it about 6 months, 9 months before we have to pay up. But you are telling us that you have to pay until 2024. About 10% would be paid only in the last 2 years. Is that the same for other government projects? Is that a usual condition for government projects? Professor Chan or who? Yes? I'll give a brief introduction first. Last year, after tendering was done, the tendering price remains valid. It's still good. And also, this building includes a laboratory and other facilities for teaching medicine. But we are going by the market price when we go for tendering, and there may be some fluctuations. But generally speaking, the pricing of this project is at a reasonable level. As for future expenditure, we follow the payment timetable at different stages of the projects. So it is in line with the usual practice. Okay, after I've asked about finances, I'd like to ask another question. There are only 26 car parking spaces in the basement. This is not a particularly accessible site. I'd like to ask whether 26 car parking spaces would suffice for the use of the teaching staff and visitors, or is it that only people at a certain rank can park their cars at the building? Since this is not a very accessible place by public transport, why are we providing so few car parking spaces? Director, the 26 parking spaces are to satisfy the building laws. It is next to the main building of the Faculty of Medicine. There are 2 stories of car parks there in the main building, and they are quite enough for all the professors. These 26 car parking spaces are mainly for patients or for other people who do short periods of research at this building. But the university staff usually park at the main building of the Faculty of Medicine. No more questions. Okay, Ms. Tanya Chan. 5 minutes. I'd like to ask about trees. Just now, Mr. Lam there will be site staff and special landscape architects who did some investigation. But I have looked at your design plan. You are going to remove all the trees according to the design plan. You said there could be a chance for survival, but I believe that is not going to be true. Last year, you built an elevated highway in Wang Chuk Hang, or a footbridge. You have been trying to save valuable trees. But now you are going to fell 2 old and valuable trees in the OVT register. I haven't seen that happen too often in recent years. Is it because of the site constraint? I know it is on a slope. I know the slope has to be stabilized. I have read the papers. But it seems you are just exploiting the opportunity to do this building. Can I refer to PWSC paper 20, enclosure 7? At the T41 and 43 places, you can see that if you look at the proposed building, especially at the middle of T43, it is right on the boundary, and T41 is a little removed from the boundary. The crown of the tree would be inside the building site. Well, if you are really going to fell the trees, come clean. Principal Architecture Design and Research Group Limited, Mr. Lim. In fact, I watched T43 carefully at site. The design of the building is that it is such that from the 1st to the 3rd floors, the building is recessed. Therefore, the trunk of the tree is a little away from the building. As for the crown, what is shown here in the plan is a circle. And in fact, it grows to the south side of this plan. It is a little bent. So it's first of all on a slope. It is not very stable. Since it also grows away from the slope, the relevant experts have confirmed that there is a very slim chance for the tree to be transplanted. Okay, transplanting it is one thing. And keeping it here on site is another thing. I can see that the building is set back or recessed at certain places. Say in enclosure 4, you can see that. But I'm aware that you need to do foundation works. As you know, the roots spread to an area as big as the crown. So whether it bends away from the slope or not, if you do the foundation works like that, the roots will be damaged. My question is it that the tree is in the way of your project, not only how it relates to the building? Perhaps the foundation would already damage the roots. And as you know, we have Professor Chim Chi-yong at the university, who is a very famous tree expert. Have you talked to him? I know sometimes you have no choice. But if the professor has come to a view, I'd like to know about it. Well, this is where he works. I'm sure you must have consulted him. Is that the case? Members know very well how we deal with these issues. The foundation works will not affect the roots. The foundation works would be away from the roots of these trees. Now we are just concerned whether the slope stabilization works can allow us to minimize the impact on the trees. As I said, personally speaking, I am as members about our concern for these trees. If we can do it at all, I would very much hope that we could be able to preserve the tree. But I can give no guarantee at this moment. Together with the Lands Department, we are discussing details. So today, I cannot guarantee that we can certainly preserve the trees, but we are working hard and we are discussing with different departments. I really appreciate members' concern. I'd like to mention that this is not a tree in the OVT register. It is because of the diameter of the trunk, which is huge. That is why it is an important tree. It is a banyan tree. But no matter what, if we can preserve the tree, we will do our best to do it. But at this moment, we cannot say for sure it can be preserved. But we will not lightly fell this tree. I think you have repeated that point many times. Mr. Martin Liao, 5 minutes first round. Chairman, I like Ms. Tanya Chan. I like to support the project, but I'd like to ask about the project cost. According to the PWSC paper, in 2016-17, in that academic year, there is a shortfall of 42,800 meters square, NOFA. And the proposed building will be able to provide NOFA of 10,400 square meters. The Hong Kong U has already got an expansion plan for the next 10 years, including building 3 more academic buildings within the main campus. If the NOFA will be the same as the proposed building, then they will be able to tackle the issue.
So my question is whether or not you know whether the progress of the efforts by the university to raise funds for these projects. Perhaps I can start. I've been working very hard recently on, for example, putting forward proposals to parties which have indicated they are interested in donating to the university. Of course, we cannot disclose any names at this moment, but it's very likely they will get such donations. On the other hand, at the Sassoon Road campus, other than this project, in the main campus of the medical school, we are also conducting design for the expansion of the campus because we do not have enough space for student activities. Mr. A. Chan, 5 minutes. Thank you. At the panel and at the PWSC meeting, myself and other members have asked about the provision of gender-friendly toilets. Mr. Pang had indicated that in the new academic building, it will be the first building in Hong Kong which will provide gender-friendly toilets on every floor. Mr. Man Fong from the consultant said that other than male and female lavatories and accessible lavatories, the new complex will provide 41 gender-friendly lavatories, which will be partitioned into different cubicles. So I'd like to reaffirm once again that whether this is true, and if so, we would like to say that we welcome that. I understand that Hong Kong U will be building other new academic complexes going forward. I'd like to know whether or not this is the broad direction in future that you're going to provide these gender-friendly lavatories. My answer will be the same as the one I gave last time. Whatever we have promised to do, we will honor our undertaking. We have actually talked to the student unions and the stakeholders, and we will work with them together to work out the direction for our future development so that our students and the community will support the direction that we adopt. On the second floor, there will be a Chinese medicine clinic, and you'll provide the space for students to practice there. Looking at the price list, I understand that for specialty OPD, the fee will be 300 something to 500. I'd like to know how you set those fees. And at a new academic complex, some people are asking whether or not it could be cheaper. And if not, could you undertake that you will not increase the fees, over a period of time? Well, actually, it is not for the few of us to set the charges, but the university follows certain principle. We're not relying on these premises to make a profit. We just want to recover the cost. Sometimes we're not even able to do that. As you know, for the professors who provide consultation to patients, they charge the salary of a professor, and therefore we need to recover the cost. But you've not explained how you're going to set the fees and what would be the mechanism for fee adjustment. If you're going to adjust the fees every year, you can tell us. I'm asking whether you can promise that you'll not adjust the fees for a period of time. Well, I think the fees will be set by the Chinese medicine clinic, and it's not for the few of us here present to give you an answer. But it is our usual practice that fees are adjusted. For example, when the professor's salaries are increased, we will make an adjustment accordingly. But we will not adjust the fees every year. There would normally be a review once every few years. If losses have been incurred, then we will adjust the fees. But it is not our aim to make a profit. Understand? I'm not going to delay this project for that reason, but I'd like to know whether or not you could give us a paper later on as to how you set the fare fees, and if there should be any adjustment, what is the mechanism for you to do that, and would it be subject to any supervision? If you say that no matter what fees you charge, you'll still be incurring a loss. But anyway, you're still using public funds to build this complex, and therefore you should not follow the market practice. And looking at the third plan, there is a telephone survey research room. Is that for the use of this department? What about other departments? Can they also use this telephone survey room? Well, one thing we are doing now is that we are trying our best to collect big data. We want to collect as much big data as possible, and then we try to identify what are the areas that we need to step up our efforts. For such surveys or the data collected through our clinics, basically consultation is for the purpose of collecting data. So the data collected will determine, for example, the course content and so on. Chairman, I don't think that is very clear. Is it that the nursing department is it that only certain department can use this facility? Well, the member refer to the nursing department. They have a study. For example, if we have a project, let's say we don't want to encourage people to smoke, and to do that we need to conduct a survey where we have questionnaire surveys. Normally, part of the surveys will be done through telephone interviews, and this room will be used for such a purpose. So that we will be able to collect data from the public. Eddie G, your first round. Thank you. In paragraph 26 of the paper, you say that there are different energy conservation, green and recycle features, including the photovoltaic system. At the panel, I asked the university to tell us about the voltage of the photovoltaic system, what is the cost of installation, and so on. I note that in the reply from the Bureau, they've not answered this question. So first of all, I'd like to ask whether they have forgotten to answer the question. Okay, if I may. Now, normally, for the photovoltaic system, the cost recovery will take a long time. But we've talked to the power company, and we've learned that recently the government has been, implementing certain new measures. That is, the power generated from such a system will be repurchased at a very high price. In that case, the payback period will be, drastically shortened. But we have no indication yet as to how much will be paid. But from what I've heard, they will repurchase the power generated at several times the market rate. Deputy Secretary, regarding the green and renewable energy system, there is one paragraph explaining that we talk about the chillers, the automatic monitoring system for the air quality system, and also the heat exchange turbine and pipes, and also the construction energy. So you're just reciting what is in the paper. You're silent about the photovoltaic system. In the whole energy savings, I'm asking you about E. You're telling me your answers relating to section A, B, C, D, but you've not given an answer in respect of E. So for the entire energy conservation facilities, the payback period is 9.6 years. At the panel meeting, I asked a specific question about the kilowatt hours to be generated by the photovoltaic system. Does anyone have the information? Chairman, let me say this again. The information we have received said there will be a policy. I don't care whatever message you have received, but in 26E you say there is going to be a photovoltaic system. So my question is whether or not, what is the capacity of the system? How many kilowatt hours will be generated? Yeah, a simple answer, yes or no. Could somebody provide us with more information regarding the photovoltaic system? Our understanding is that for the solar panels, the payback period, it normally is very long. It may be even in terms of decades, but for all the facilities that we're going to install, we expect that the overall payback period is 9.6 years. Including the solar panel, it's going to be 13. So we already have such information. I don't think they have answered my question. I asked my question is about how many kilowatt hours will be generated. Is it that you don't have the data, or you don't have the numbers offhand? But well, I can tell members that it will not be a lot. And secondly, other than payback, want to build these facilities also for a teaching purpose. But we'll be happy to provide the number, but it's not going to be a large quantity. Chairman, I have other questions, but I'll wait until my next round. Dr. K.K. Kwok. Basically, Chairman, I support this project, but I heard I'm not very happy with what Mr. Lim told us just now. Now, in this design, you say the trees affected are not old and valuable trees, but still you propose to remove some of the trees, and you say you don't have any confidence that they can be safe. I think Tanya Chen already asked whether you've consulted the views of Professor Jim, and you have not given us an answer. Could you, supplement on that? And secondly, there will be a Chinese medicine clinic in the complex. We're concerned about the fees charged by these clinics. We all know that in Hong Kong U Faculty of Medicine, there are many professors who charge quite a bit, for their private consultation service they provide. I don't think we should encourage the professors to do a lot of that for both Western and Chinese medicine. So is it the case that half of the fees charged will be paid back to the clinicians, the Chinese medicine clinicians? If that's the case, we need to have a system to monitor the fees. Otherwise, people who should be teaching full-time will be spending a lot of their time to earn some extra income, and this is not something the university should encourage. Last time I asked about the donation from the Li Ka-shing Fund. According to supplementary paper, you said that it's been paid in full already. So is that the case that in future you need to acknowledge when the complexes come built, you will acknowledge the Li Ka-shing Charity Fund? Well, this is, of course, within the realm of the university's autonomy, but I don't think we should, further, acknowledge, the Li Ka-shing Charity Fund. This complex is going to cost a lot of money to build. The Hong Kong U now is very open. Many of the buildings and the centennial buildings are accessible to members of the public and the residents living nearby. And there are places where they can go and visit and use the facilities there. For this complex, other than the consultation rooms, are there other facilities which will be accessible to the public? Regarding the question of trees, we have actually consulted with Professor Jim, except that I do not want to quote the names of a colleague in answering the question. Before I came, I've talked to Professor Jim, and his comment is very simple. He said it's not worth spending a lot of money to preserve these two trees, because these two trees do not have a lot of value. It's not worth spending a lot of money to save them. I don't want really to quote the professor's name, but having heard his advice, and since members are very concerned, that's why I'm telling you this. Regarding fees, we will be able to give you a written reply later on. We're not in a position to give you an answer now. Okay. The other question about accessibility to the public. Well, this building is linked to the QMH via a footbridge. Patients who go for consultation to QMH will have to pass through this complex on the way out. Other than the Chinese medicine clinics, there will be a garden there. And Dr. Fernando Zhang already noted that last time that there will be some, he suggested that we should have cafeterias there to serve the public. So there will be a cafeteria there, yes. So what sort of cafeteria? It's not really a restaurant per se. It's something like a kiosk or like a cafe. When the patients coming down from QMH, if they are thirsty or hungry, they can patronize the facility. In the cross-section plan number 1 and number 2, you will find that there's some learning common space, or and this will be linked to the pedestrian footbridge, so that the users of the complex, other than the teachers and students, can go to QMH from Sassoon Road. So patients and the public can make use of these spaces. And this is, so it will be used by teachers and students and the patrons of the hospitals and so on. So there will also be floors for teaching purpose, which will not be open to the public. But as in the case of other teaching complexes, there will be open spaces which the public will be able to use. Mr. Pt1. If you look at the buildings at the within university, you do not see a sign saying Shing Medical School along all the medical, faculty facilities along Sassoon Road. You don't see the name Shing, charity fund. Well, I support the funding proposal, but I'm concerned about the shortfall of teaching areas. We understand that in paragraph 6 that you will support the UGC funded universities you support the campus development. You say that there will be the Hong Kong U now has a space shortfall of around 42,000 square meters, NOFA. The new academic building will provide 10,400 square meters. There will still be a shortfall of more than 30,000 square meters. When we look at the information available since the handover, one shocking piece of information is that at the times when Tung Chee-hwa was the CE, there were 12 fundings approved for 12, for the building of 12 academic complexes, 20 during the time of Donald Zhang, 0 when C.Y. Leung was the CE. And in 2017 this is the only one project. So my question is that for all the UGC funded universities, could you give us the numbers? That is, what is the total overall shortage of academic space? Could you give us a breakdown of the shortfall in respect of all the individual universities, and explain why this is the case? Is it because C.Y. Leung did not support any of the local universities? And also, do you have any plan to resolve this problem? For the spaces which are lacking, is it that they are not very important for the universities or not? And if there is any impact at all, how are you going to resolve this problem or make up for the shortfall? For Hong Kong U, there is a shortage of 30,000 square meters. What plans do you have to make up for that shortfall?
Thank you for your question. As for the UGC-sponsored 8 universities, the shortage of space, we have a total figure. Up to 2017, there is a shortage of 105,500 plus teaching space. As for the breakdowns of each university, we can give you some supplementary information later on. Whether or not the administration is concerned with that, yes, we do. We are fighting for funding together with the Education Bureau. There are 2 reasons. Because there's a lot of competition for the Capital Reserve, Construction Reserve Fund, and we have to compete with the other departments, and there are difficulties involved. And on one hand, also that the university have other alternative for funding, for instance, private donations to help them in their development. The Education Bureau and the UGC will continue to fight for funding for the universities. You have not answered my question. There is a shortage of over 30,000 square meters. What is your future plan to solve that? You have already replied to Mr. Liu Chengkong. So for the Hong Kong U, we have identified some places for erecting buildings. And at this stage, there are donators who have expressed their interest of endowment to the university. So there are plans for those donators. How is it that the university can still function with this shortage of space? Well, students are sitting very close together. We add seats where they shouldn't be, and there are students sitting on the staircase. For instance, for us, we do not sit inside but outside, and very often, and I have to walk several minutes to have another meeting in another building, but doctors have told me that I should walk more for exercise. So for many not major services, they are outside or in far away areas. And there are also, we stack the classes. There are very early classes, even at 8 o'clock. So there are many different I can say not very normal arrangements. I hope that the administration will actively support the university in search of the solution, the UGC. Mrs. Wong. A simple reply. The UGC is very much concerned with the shortage of space with the universities. Every year, the universities will submit their plans and programs, and they have plans at different stages. And we have also transferred these plans to the Education Bureau, and we are really doing our utmost to help them. Tanya Chen. Maybe less infrastructure would be better for us to give more to the universities so that they don't have to sit on the stairs. In the law department, the law department's buildings are fairly close together, and before it used to be dispersed in different places. Mr. Tam, I think that Professor Jim wouldn't mind what you have said. He is a gentleman. I'd like to raise a question on paragraph 33. There is no lands department representative here. Well, there are some follow-up. It says here that there is a felling of 42 trees, and also there's a land exchange. And there is also considerations afterwards whether that will be approved. Well, as long as the land exchange is done, and during the process, everything should be completed. Well, what is the procedure of felling trees and approval? So, according to their assessment, they are going to fell how many trees, and at least they have to say how many trees they are preserving. I have an experience in the Murray building, now is at hotel. In the papers, it was a government building. There were a dozen trees, and then only was left standing, because in the property paper itself, there's only one responsibility of keeping one tree, and that was why only one tree was left standing. So what would you do within the papers so that we can have something to rely on in the papers, avoiding conflicts afterwards? So the deeds, property deeds, we in the land exchange and in the deeds and papers, we are still conducting our work. We have not come to the final stage. So there are some procedures that we have to discuss with the Lands Department. I also explained just now that there are things that I cannot tell you right now, right away, straightforwardly, because we are still discussing it with the Lands Department, because we cannot unilaterally settle everything. So we will continue our discussions with the Lands Department, and we hope that ultimately we will come to a conclusion good for everyone. The last time I looked into this question, and it was revealed to me that it was a problem of the deeds. Mr. Chu Hoi-tik, second round, 4 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am not making it difficult for this project. As for the trees, I have a following question, and after this, I don't have any more other questions. Similar to the line of thinking of Ms. Tanya Chen, in Annex 7, for the consolidation of slopes, part of that is in the envisaged building outline. You say that it is necessary that works have to be done on the slope. Is it to avoid collapses? Or is it that you want to straighten the blue line of the building to enlarge it, so to speak? And that's why you are cutting away some of the slopes and consolidate the remaining slopes. Is it such a kind of consolidation of a slope, and not because that the slope itself presents dangers? The condition of the slope is not ideal, and it is not in keeping with the safety parameters, and that is why we need to have some consolidation work. We know that there are many slopes in Hong Kong, and we are not really looking into them, even though they may not be safe. And if you have works in the adjacent areas, we have the duty to upgrade such slopes, for instance, to change the soil there, or we have compaction of the soil. I understand, but by this process, you are setting back the slope so that the building itself, the shape, there is a straight line possible. No, for our building, for the first floor to the third floor, the footprint is set back, and it's only on the fourth floor that it comes forward. So it is only that we need to have appropriate consolidation of the slope now. I'd like to raise another question. When the works commence, you will look into the possibility of preserving tree 43. Are you preserving it in situ, or are you talking about transplanting? For the experts of the trees, or the suggestion by Professor Chim, I think transplanting would not really give it much of a chance of survival. Now, we will discuss with the Lands Department and other relevant departments to look into the matter. Now, are you going to preserve the tree in situ? Are you really going this direction? I agree. The transplanting is not really ideal because this is growing horizontally. I will speak with other departments and we will see if it's technically feasible for in situ preservation. Dr. Fernando Chang, of course, I would like to have the tree preserved in its original place. However, according to Mr. Choi, we are short of teaching space in all 8 universities. It is a sizable shortage. It adds up to over 100,000 square meters. Well, you said that there are fierce competition for the Capital Reserve Fund. I don't really understand why there is such competition because we are awash with money. There will be a surplus of over 100 billion, and we should invest in the future, and education is one area. But you are saying that we are facing fierce competition and students are sitting on the stairs for their classes. Well, this really won't work. Now, I know for the UGC, they are doing their utmost for funding. What are the specific steps taken? You are saying that it is very difficult in competition. Well, even if we approve the funding, we still have to wait maybe a long time for funding, whereas the installations in the universities remain less than ideal. So maybe what is the obstacle? Is it the finance secretary or is it the home affairs secretary? What are the specific solutions that we can have in order to solve the matter of a shortage of teaching space in universities? Secretary. Well, the competition is due to the fact that there are lots of other works in education, in health, in social work. They all need construction projects. Of course, the teaching space that a university needs, they have to submit it to the UGC, and the UGC will submit it to the Education Bureau and will also go to the construction department to study the feasibility. And all these procedure takes time. And it is not only a matter of money, it is also a matter of projects running at the same time, and there will be a matter of human resources, and we need to queue up for these different public works. Apart from resources distribution, we must also have an order of works. Now, do you have a specific timetable that you would be able to supply the teaching space that they are short of? Well, we will do our utmost to get the funding, but we do not have a specific timetable. Well, I have often heard that you would do your utmost. So we are doing our utmost administration. The administration has the power, has the authority, and have policies. You cannot only say to the public that I will do my best. You should have a roadmap, a timetable telling the public how you are going to go about it, so that even if we give the university some space, they are still very short. Well, maybe maybe you need to have the timetable and the methodology and the roadmap in supplementary information, written information for us. Hong Kong U has also mentioned that they would consider snack kiosks and also barrier-free accessibility. And they are amenable to these suggestions. On the third floor, there is a mother's room. What is it used for? Is it for breastfeeding? There are also exam clinic. Are you talking about physical examination, or are you talking about examination for the students? I'm a bit confused. Professor, the mother's room will be used for breastfeeding. As for the examination room, it is for nursing students and for Chinese medicine students to learn diagnosis. That is to say, physical examination and not examination to sit, not a room to sit for examinations by students. So it's not. So you should say that it's a physical examination room or a room for diagnosis. The Principal Assistant Secretary has heard it, and also the Undersecretary has also heard it. You can follow up after the meeting. Are there any other questions? If not, we've come to voting. We don't have a quorum, so we need to sound the bell.
Okay, we have a quorum. We are going to vote on FCR 2017-1851. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Those against? I think the majority of members are in favor. I declare the motion passed. Next, item 2, FCR 2017-1852. It invites members to pass the item discussed by the PWSC on the 29th of November 2017. This is to upgrade part of 765 CL as 818 CL entitled Development of Anderson Road Quarry Site Road Improvement Infrastructure Works to Cat A at an estimated cost of $2654.4 million in money of the day prices, and B, the retention of the remainder of 765 CL in Category B. Some members have asked for singling out this item for voting at the FC. The PWSC spent 1 hour 5 minutes on this paper, and there are 2 supplementary papers from the administration. Today, we have Ms. Doris Ho Pui Ling, Deputy Secretary for Development, and her team attending the meeting to answer questions. Any questions from members? Mr. Eddie Chu. First round, 5 minutes. Thank you, Chair. As it was at the PWSC, I'm of the view that even if there will be a lot of PRH around Anderson Road, but in this project, all the housing will be for sale. Only 20% would be used as subsidized housing for sale. I think this is unreasonable. I believe the administration has written back to me, and in para 7 of that paper, it says that the Kwun Tong and Sai Kung district councils generally accepted the housing portfolio during 2 consultation exercises. I'd like to ask about such community engagement. When was this done? The administration does not give detailed figures, and then you ask people, is it good because we are going to strike a balance? Do you think the public cannot give any informed views? What I mean is, Chairman, think about property prices. And you can imagine if the trend of property prices continues. Let me not talk about the HOS. What about the 80% private housing? Residents who took part in the consultation also found that the prices would be reasonable and affordable. Can I please have some response? DS, thank you for the question. When did we gather views? It was in 2015. And I'd like to say something about the public-private housing ratio. As the member said at the beginning, our original planning is for 9,400 units at Anderson Road Quarry site. There will be 20% public housing and 80% private housing. The 20% public housing would be HOS, because we have seen that there are 2 major PRH developments. There will be 18,000 units in those 2 estates. So we'd like to balance the planning, and that is why at Anderson Road Quarry, the private-public ratio would be 8:2. But there are new developments. In the policy address last year, we are thinking of launching a pilot, the Home Starters scheme, and one of the sites would be at Anderson Road Quarry. Private housing that would be built here, there will be 1,700 units, but 1,000 of that would be for the Home Starters scheme. And there is another new development. After coming to the PWSC, we have heard members' views. And a site at Anderson Road Quarry, which has been earmarked for private housing development, will be turned into the building of HOS. After these two changes, the ratio, which was 2:8, would become about 50-odd to 40-odd%. This is the latest situation. Thank you, Chair. Then I'd like to ask a further question. In para 2 of your response to my letter, you mentioned the traffic volume that will be generated in the morning peak. Is it that you do not have any figures for PRH? Do you have that figure? Thank you, Chair. On this site, we are going to have subsidized public housing and private housing. Therefore, we only use those two figures. Just one more word, Chairman. In fact, my question was general in nature. I was only expect a general answer. And that is how much traffic volume will be generated by PRH. Next member, Dr. Fernando Zhang, first round, 5 minutes. Thank you, Chair. I understand that you are also including On Tai and On Tat estates. That is why here you want to include more private housing. And you're talking about a so-called balance. But we also face another problem. As the FS said 2 days ago, land supply for private housing is achieving its target, but not so for public housing. That for public housing is falling far short of the target. We are quite worried, especially when property prices are still on the rise. When the general public, and I'm not really talking about the grassroots, I'm talking about middle-class families, also find it hard to be able to afford a private housing unit that is appropriate for living in. We're not talking about nano flats, but a flat of 400 to 50 square feet suited for a small family, but that is not affordable by the average household in Hong Kong. We therefore think that since we have to wait many years before we can have a good supply of public housing, I am of the view that you should raise the ratio of the public housing part. You are also producing subsidized flats for sale. But if you can have more HOS, you will be able to help many people. If over half of that will be private, then they are not affordable by Hong Kong people. I therefore hope you can reconsider the ratio, that there should be more subsidized flats for sale and reduce the ratio of private housing. Is there still room to do this? After the announcement of the PA, you changed the nature of certain units, and for this project you are still at the planning stage. Is there room to enhance the ratio of subsidized housing for sale? DS, thank you for the question. I can fully understand the members' concern about the supply of public housing. That is why, as we said, in the PA, we are launching the Home Starters scheme. And on this site, after the last PWSC meeting, we have earmarked another site which was supposed to be used for private housing for public housing, and that is going to enhance the ratio from 2 to 8 to 40-something to 50-something%. I should think that you will find this quite a big enhancement. Therefore, if you ask me for further adjustment, I don't think there is a lot of room to do so. And then there is also this policy consideration. Well, certainly we have to look after the housing needs of grassroots, but also there are people who have low or median incomes and they want to own their own property. So we like to provide a balanced supply of private and public housing. Well, exactly, Chairman, I'm talking about these low and middle income groups who have property ownership expectations, and they can only look for units in subsidized flats for sale. And it seems a flat costing $5 million is like a gift for the poor. Well, that is almost ridiculous. And for a row of 8 years, we have been found to be the city with the least affordable housing. Well, this is, of course, my view. I'm sure there is still room to increase subsidized flats for sale. Chairman, I will wait for another round. Mr. Jeremy Tam, 5 minutes. In the paper, it is said that there will be a two-directional elevator of 170 meters long. I'd like to know whether there will also be a lift, because wheelchair-bound people cannot use the escalators. Are you providing a lift as well? Did I miss anything? Please, thank you. A lift. Yes, Chairman. Between Hill Kwong and Hill Ming Streets, apart from the escalator, which is E8, there is another group of escalators linking up these two streets, and then there is also a lift. Thank you. My other question is that the TH Bureau received a proposal from the MTR about the alignment of the East Kowloon extension, but this has not been made public. So it is possible that there will be an extension of the railway to East Kowloon. If indeed there will be this railway, then many people will be living at Anderson Road Quarry, and in fact 2 PRH estates have started occupation intake. So if there will be MTR, have we got any space reserved for a station for the future railway in this project? Have you thought about that? If yes, have you already reserved space for the railway and for its entrances and exits? DS? Or the director? The MTR has already done the initial design of the East Kowloon Railway. It is now with the administration. According to the RDS, there will be many stops along this line. because to the west it links up with Diamond Hill Station, and to the east it links up with Po Lam. It is going to run parallel to the Kwun Tong line. And the strategy is to provide 5 to 6 stations. We count from the west, there will be Choi Hong, Shun Tin, Sao Mau Ping, Po Tat. According to that alignment, our site is actually quite a distance away from that alignment. But in our planning, there are many groups of pedestrian links. After the projects are completed on Anderson Road quarry site, when people go to Po Tat and Sao Mau Ping, it will be very convenient. Chairman, Po Tat is not that far away from Anderson Road. We don't know the alignment of the railway. Only the THB knows. You seem to be saying that there will be these stops, but I would caution that you be careful because you seem to be disclosing the future stop stations. Well, let me say that you are only speculating, or that those stations were thought about in the past, but is it really that these are the stations in the MTR's initial design? If you can say for sure that it will not be at Anderson Road, then that's one thing. But in fact, you may not know whether these are really the stations. And this is a project which is very close to the future East Kowloon MTR line. Shouldn't the TH Bureau see whether there would be any conflict, and that this will not become one of the reasons not to build a railway? And you may say that because when we undertook this project, we did not reserve any space for MTR, and that is why there won't be this East Kowloon line. I don't want you to use this as an excuse. Please leave some time for them to answer. Well, I understand the members' concern. I mentioned those stops, and they were recommended in RDS 2000. When the MTR made the plan, it was aware of the land use at Anderson Road. When it considered the alignment, it must have factored in this project. Together with THB and MTR, we will study further into the plans about Anderson Road. Mr. Shu Kao-chun, first round, 5 minutes. Thank you, Chair. First, you are going to provide 20% public housing and 80% private housing. That is not acceptable. I hope you understand our stance. As for consultation, I'd like to clarify something. In responding to Mr. Eddie Chu, you said you consulted 2 consultation exercises, one at Kwun Tong DC, the other one at Sai Kung DC. How many people attended those consultation exercises? What was the response? You cannot just give broad brush answers. You should tell us what was the response at those exercises. And they took place in 2015. On Tat Estate had population intake in August 2016, and the other estate in July 2017. There are so many people now in those estates. Shouldn't you also consult them, because they are right next to each other? Will you do further consultation for On Tat and On Tai estates to know their views?
Although you say 20% will be public housing, but the welfare facility, there are serious problems regarding welfare facilities in the newly built public housing estates. I made this point many times before, that is, you only after people have moved into these new developments do you start planning the welfare facilities. So public consultation is very important. Will you conduct public consultation and try to find out what are the residents' needs in terms of transport and welfare facilities? Okay, it's all about consultation. Thank you. First of all, regarding the public engagement exercise in 2015, I'm sorry I don't have the details offhand, including those who attended. Perhaps I can provide information to the member after the meeting. Secondly, the question was whether or not we can conduct further consultation. I think that there would still be the opportunity, because in the Anderson Road quarry there are some GIC sites which could be used to build schools or other public facilities like community halls and sports stadium. I believe that the department's concerned will, at the planning stage, consult the district councils and the local residents in respect of those developments. Thirdly, the members refer to the ratio of public and to housing, private housing for the Anderson Road quarry site. After the adjustment that I've told members about, the ratio now is no longer 20 to 80%, is rather 40-something to 50-something%. I also like to say that while some members still do not agree with that, but when we talk about a plan, I think we need to bear in mind that on Touchin and on Thai estate, these two estates are entirely consisting of PRH units. There are about 18,000 PRH units. If you take into account the 18,000 PRH units plus the Anderson Road site, the 90-odd housing units, the ratio between public and private housing is that public housing is 80 and private housing 20%. When we talk about the supply of public and private housing, we shouldn't just focus on one or two sites. Although in the long-term housing strategy, the target is aiming at a ratio of 60% public and 40% private housing. But we try to identify sites, for example, the 210 sites for rezoning, the ratio is 7:3, 70% public, 30% private. When we try to find land for housing development, we are working towards, a bias towards public housing. Chairman, I have 15 minutes to add one more point. I'm happy to hear that there will be opportunities for further consultation, and I think this is better than simply saying that you've heard our views. I hope that you will make it happen. Under Secretary, I think you've heard that Mr. Siu is very touched. Mr. Shing, 5 minutes. Chairman, I'm very touched yet. Following Mr. Siu, I think the Department and the Bureau has promised to conduct further consultation. I think it's a good thing. I think the Anderson Road project. Earlier at the PWSC meeting, I had strongly criticized the CEDD for being out of touch and did not really understand the problems confronting East Kowloon and Kwun Tong in particular. I think since the last meeting, they have the sincerity to come and listen to us, and I think we should commend them for that. Regarding this project, I believe the CEDD should not, forget about this after the project is approved, because the whole development project affects the whole of East Kowloon, especially the transport situation in Kwun Tong. You said Cheung Kwan O, Lam Tin Tunnel and T2 will be built, but that's for the future. We don't know where you will be by that time. The residents in the area would very much like to see some practical measures that can improve the traffic situation, the congestion at the road junctions, and so on. So I hope that you can give us more details regarding the timetable for these specific arrangements. And secondly, regarding public housing development, I'm all in favor of that. I note that supply of public housing is very tight. So how can we benefit the community? I think you would need to, answer that question, because you're not really adding too much value Yeah. Thirdly, I'm concerned about the East Kowloon Railway line. You refer to the RDS and the East Kowloon extension, but it's all talk so far. So for the Anderson Road development, will it benefit from, for example, the provision of an MTR station? I think you need to look into that. You may say this is not your business, this is the business of the CEDD. But to really resolve the problem facing Anderson Road site in future, you need to pay attention to those issues. I also like the administration to answer the question regarding the short, medium, long-term arrangements for the transport, facilities. You said that you will continue to conduct consultation. So how are you going to start the consultation? When are you going to do that? And how do you plan to conduct a consultation? First of all, short, medium term, transport infrastructure development. For this project, since 2013, we have been in close contact and engaging the community when conducting our plan. And the public is very concerned about the transport arrangements. We have some short, medium-term facilities in place. For the short term, in Sao Mau Ping, we have already carried out some road improvement works. For example, in the Nuclear Bay, Water Bay Road, we would like to further enhance the traffic signage along Clearwater Bay Road and Choi Hing Lake. You don't need to read from a text. Just give me a timetable. You don't waste my time. Well, you still have your second round, Mr. Cho. So it will be done in 2018. Regarding Sao Mau Ping Road, we are now looking for a consultant so that in 2018 we will be to help us take a look at whether in Sao Mau Ping we can have further enhancement works, for example, the bus stops and the lay-bys and so on. For the East Kowloon Railway line, we will take back the members' views to the THB regarding the plan for Sao Mau Ping and Anderson Road development area. In this project, we have set up a community liaison group, and we will make use of this medium to really, liaise with the local residents. Thank you. Eddie G, your second round in 4 minutes. Thank you. I'd like to ask the Undersecretary this question. Previously, the ratio was 8:2. I understand that the number of units was 8,650. After the adjustment, and you've turned some of the units into HOS units and home starter scheme units. The latest number is that the supply will be 9,630. That's 1,000 units more. So what is the increase in the population numbers? And also, would you need to conduct another TIA as a result? Undersecretary, thank you. At the beginning, when we had the 20 to 80% ratio, our estimate was that the total number of housing units would be 9,400 something units, and this was indicated in the PWSC paper. The ratio was 20 to 80%. After the changes that I mentioned earlier on, sites originally earmarked for private housing has been converted into public housing. As a result, we have 200 more units more, so the number is now 9,600 something. So the number of private, the floor area for private housing would be slightly less than public housing. So it's only 200 extra units. And the impact on the traffic situation should not be significant. Now, the figure I quoted is that In 2015, when you had the public consultation, number was 8,650. After the TIA was done in January 2016. So I'd like to know whether or not my understanding is still valid. So your TIA was done in 2016. You can't say that when you made the announcement it was 9,000 something, but when you earlier conducted the consultation and the TIA, the numbers were not like that. Director, the TIA was concluded in early 2016, but the traffic assessment was a very protracted exercise. If I remember correctly, in 2014 we started already on the TIA. Chairman, I was saying that according to my understanding, the option you consulted the public in 2015 said there were 8,000 something units and not 9,000 something. So there is a shortfall of 1,000 units. It would mean that the population number would be different. And if you say, the impact, you say there's no impact, then fine. I just want an answer. We don't have any impression that we have used the number of 8,500 something as the basis for planning for this site. All along we've been talking about 9,400 units. Well, I'll look up the information again. Perhaps I've made a mistake. So the consultation was done in 2014. The basis of consultation was 9,400 units. For such TIA studies, normally we would build in some factors into the study. In any transport study, we would provide for a 10% contingency or buffer. Mr. Uchiwai, 5 minutes. Thank you. The paper has proposed to convert sites for private housing to PRH units, and I welcome that. Whether it was the consultation with the District Council or the PWSC, I have said that if you plan to build private housing units, nobody could afford them. But I'd like to ask another question. According to China Cam's latest sales number, it is expected the unit will be sold for $22,000 per square foot. If you're going to embark on the so-called home starter scheme, you said part of the site will be used to build home starter units, and will work with a private developer. I don't know which site you will use for that purpose. But I cannot imagine, that if the units were sold for $22,000 per square foot, under the home starter scheme, you allow a 20% discount, it would still be $16,000 to $18,000 per square foot. How can the people of Hong Kong afford that? That's my first question. So shouldn't you be more realistic? And the concept of home starter scheme should be such that you should ask the housing authority or the housing society to build, units like the sandwich class housing scheme, so that you can, offer a bigger discount, so that the units will not be pegged to the market price, and the subsidized units for sale are really affordable to the public.
我想問下呢點上面。
So perhaps the THB is not here, and you may not be able to answer the question. But I think you should take this back and consult with your colleagues. I hope you can give us an answer. Otherwise, as the CE said, the home starter scheme she proposed, you have to, people who can afford to buy these units will need the assistance of the parents, otherwise they simply would not be able to afford to buy these units. So please, note that. And the Anderson Quarry site, you may need to redeploy the land so that you can sell more subsidized housing units which are affordable to the public. So that is just a comment. Next, I also like to ask a question regarding the transport infrastructure or facilities. One thing that seems to be very odd is that when I've asked a question about the traffic flow, especially along Clearwater Bay Road, and the number you gave was 0.8, 0.9. I don't understand. For new Clearwater Bay Road, it would mean that there is still some spare capacity to cope with the additional, demand. But according to my observation, during the peak hours in the morning, we hear the news through the radio that the traffic is already tailing back all the way to Shing Estate. When the traffic situation is like that already, how should we interpret the numbers that you quoted? Traffic flow. Who would like to answer the question? We don't have the THP here. Director. We conducted a survey for this project. We're talking about the traffic flow along different locations. In the area near Clearwater Bay Road and Shing Estate, the UC ratio was so after the traffic improvement works, 1.08 will become 1.01. If it is near the Choi Hong, interchange, that is a busier junction. At that junction, you have several major trunk roads converging at that point. We know that the traffic there is very busy, and that's why we will be in the new Clearwater Bay Road coming out to Kwun Tong. We are working with the TD to see how the PLB stops could be, reorganized so that we can, improve the traffic flow there. Fernando Jiang. The site is on a high terrain compared with, it's far away from some of the other community facilities. I'm worried that for those who are handicapped, whether it's the elderly or the handicapped, I'm worried about the question of accessibility. It's not just that when the roads can be used by those who are wheelchair bound, it is accessible. For people who need to go shopping, buy the groceries, or go out for meals, it's quite a distance away. So can you, in your design, can you have, more facilities to help these people, help the residents, whether it's the provision of lifts or passenger travelators or travelators to help the pedestrians. At the Anderson Road Quarry site, we have several groups of travelators linking the quarry site at Anderson Road with the town center of Kwun Tong. There is one group of barrier-free corridor. We'll provide, for example, lifts for those who are wheelchair bound as well.
I'd like to know the scale, because in Admiralty, in the South Island line, there are lifts, but the lifts are very small. Have you considered the passenger flow as well as the aging population? Do you have some sort of a capacity prediction? In the design itself, we have taken into consideration wheelchair passengers. Well, your lifts can contain 1 or 2 wheelchairs. We can contain over 1 wheelchair. How many vertical lifts are available in one same point? I don't have the figures here. I will furnish you with such information afterwards. Because very often, if there is a lift that's out of order, then nothing can be done. While you have quite 15.5 acres of open space, a lot of green, there's also a lake. Well, the LCSD will also have quite a sizable quarry garden. So I would like to ask the designs of such facilities when you are designing it. Did you have participation from the public? As for the 15.5 acres of open space, 11.5 acres are reserved for the park, the future park. The quarry park is now under designing, and before that we have also running paths and also some other open space. We have a community liaison group, and through this platform, members of LegCo and also the members of the public can exchange ideas on the design of the park. Have you envisaged community consultations sessions? Are you going to display the models and ask for their views? We are still designing, and when you have more specific plans, we can go through the community liaison groups or the district councils to get in touch with the public. Mr. Hu Chi-wai, 4 minutes, second round. We have been talking about TIA, the prediction of traffic flow. We know that from the private buildings or the sold buildings, as well as the public's housing, we envisage about 100,000 strong population. Well, you're thinking of the East Kowloon route. When will it be the study will be completed? In 2016, it was announced that the study would commence. And when will the study be completed? Do you have a timetable? The East Kowloon route, the MTR has made a proposal, and it is under study internally. The MTR, in its planning, has taken into consideration the ARQ and the development of ARQ, and they have taken that into consideration in the East Kowloon line. So it is. I'm not asking a specific date. Well, if the study is completed and it's under scrutiny from the government, when will the examination of the report or the study be done? We don't have any information as yet. The Transport and Housing Department is starting to look at the scale of the study, and we will assess as soon as possible the report. We don't have a timetable. Would it take a year, 10 years? You don't know. We'll do it as soon as possible. We believe that it will be done as soon as possible. Well, if you say as soon as possible, what does that mean specifically? Well, I will surmise, for instance, if the MTR has put forward a proposal which may involve technical complexities. It depends on the size of the project. Well, we do not have a set timetable yet. Well, I cannot force you to give us a set timetable. I hope that it won't take 10 years or 8 years. For if you look at the figures, it is the transport that in that area is very grave, serious. If you see, even if you can connect Lin Tak Road with Cheung Kwan Non Road, well, I'm afraid that it would not solve the present traffic problem. For the new Clearwater Bay Road, you can see now, without population intake, the traffic lines up until Shun Lei Estate. So you can see now the new Clearwater Bay Road is being jammed with a queue up until Shun Lei Estate. Well, would you have another updated TIA to make sure that the transport arrangements would be able to deal with the population intake? I have already given an answer last time. Last year or the year before, if we look at the transport department, we can see that the data there and the projection that we have made in the TIA are fairly similar. Mr. Chiu Hai-tik, the third round, 3 minutes. Well, let me look at the figures. Well, the figure 8,560, it is the figure given by the consultants. The TIA says that it is over 19,000. Well, if there are more public housing and more population intake, what will happen to your TIA? What about the Quarry Park? It is way up on the hill. If you look at the consultation paper in 2012, can you see it? Well, if you look at it on the screen, you might be able to see it. Well, for the rock services, you can see in the vision envisaged, it is turned into green on the rock services. So maybe 20, 30 years later, it will become a forest. Do you think that can happen? Or is it an exaggeration of a future projection? Well, I'd like to raise questions. Population and also the part of the park near the slope. What would happen to that slope? Well, you have changed the ratio, and with the population intake, would that be different? At the peak hours, what would be the vehicles in one specific space area? For private space unit, the attraction of vehicles would be higher. For some private units, we are turning them into public housing units. So in the TIA, we are putting it at a relatively safe level. As for the rock service or rock wall, Mr. Leung would answer. For the Quarry Park design, you have shown us an artist impression. the design is undergoing. And the community, members of the community as well as the district councillors have also asked us if we would take rocks and stones, these elements into the park. Yes, we will have some specimens of rocks and stones that will be included into our design. Mr. Sukha-chun, I am very touched. It is true that I am impressed. It is really a good attitude that you are taking it as an opportunity. Or I can support this proposal, but at the same time, I hope you will seriously consider that for 20% of public housing, for one public housing done, they would have enough support. It is not the number of old people community centers only. We hope that there will be teams from the social workers, that they would distribute keys to the community and to undertake case management, because when they are being able to move in, they are happy, but they are short of a lot of problems. They have a lot of problems and a lot of things that they don't have, be it material shortage or social relations. They don't have enough. So I hope that this will be a showcase, that you would demonstrate that in this area, when you have a newly built public housing, you will send social worker teams to distribute keys, to visit them at home, to see whatever needs they have. And I think that this would be very rewarding. Mr. Sukha-chun is saying that he is touched. He's repeating that he's touched. You would undoubtedly give a positive response. For social welfare facilities, there are GIC in this ARQ. Initially speaking, this land will be consecrated to community hall and social welfare installations. You mentioned that whether there will be better support to the local community when they move in. I will speak with the Housing Authority as well as the Social Welfare Department. We are going beyond the planning standards and the guidelines. There are facilities, but they are being built very lately. Well, secondly, I would also say that we have social welfare teams, that they will intervene at an appropriate time. Mr. Wu Chi-wai, we're following what Mr. Sukha-chun has said. We are talking about the site itself, whether it will be private building or the subsidized housing. Well, the newly moved in people may not have a lot of difficulties. However, when they move in, they get the keys, and they need to find their way among possible facilities. All these are difficulties. In planning, very often primary schools and other schools are not being built at the same time. The housing units may be beautiful, but they may have problems in their daily lives. So, for instance, for the Housing Authority, you may say that there may be a company downstairs that will help you to sort of prepare your unit. But of course, you need to follow the Hong Kong planning standards and guidelines. But there are 4,000 or 5,000 units that would have people moving in. So there will be a lot of possibilities for networking in this new area. This is something that the housing authorities housing authority has to take into account. We live in old areas, and the neighborhood, the neighbors are really very close together. Whereas for new areas, everybody may be shut in their new homes. So would you take that into consideration? The assistance to their social networking? What you have said, we will take it back to the housing authorities. We are the Transport and Building Department. Once we have built, then we'll hand over for other developments. What you have said is indeed important, and we will let the housing authority take that into consideration, because it is not only building the flats or units. Once they move in, because since they are moving into a new community, they need to build good neighborliness and neighborhood, and that is important for the society as a whole. I suggest this. I would support this item, which is absolutely necessary. If we are still questioning the officials, we are now at the Finance Committee. We are approving the funding, and the implementation will follow. Would there be roads that would be accessible? For instance, at the mid-level in the on the island, they very often they would have some sort of connection to the center. In 2025, we would have the East Kowloon line that would perhaps solve the problem, it is said. But would you have other plans and other alternatives? There is the TIA was done several years ago. However, there has been a lot of development since then. For instance, the traffic flow outlet, where you see Pt1 Road, Go-To Road, where you have new housing, public housing there. Well, it seems to me that you don't have a new TIA, because for those junctions, you envisage several blocks of new public housing. I doubt whether at this junction it will still be able to maintain a good traffic flow. As for cost control, I hope that there are points that are very near the local inhabitants, and you need to have explosions for widening the road. And I hope that you would do your utmost to reduce the noise. For the neighbors there, it is very difficult for them to face a few years of noise from the works. You are saying that money is not the most important element. The most important thing is to reduce the noise suffered by the people there.
I hope you can reassure the people so they don't have to suffer from this possible nuisance. Who will take the question? I can answer these three questions. Whether there are remaining works, well, yes, we agree. As the member said, we are going to have other facilities, and the target is to take residents to go to the roads beneath so they can take public transport. Say, for example, Pt1 estate residents will be taken to the bus interchange, and members of the public do not have to take any transport to go to the interchange. Secondly, the Cultural Road project. The TIA will be taken care of. Number 3, cost control. And the project on the rock slope in Shing Road. I can tell members that there will not be any blasting. We are going to cut back the slope. We know it is close to people, say those in Heng Tin Estate. We will direct contractors to make use of low noise equipment. And if schools hold examinations at the time, we will adjust the work hours in order to minimize nuisance. I don't know whether you are unfamiliar with the situation. You have to remember that in the TIA, one of the junctions is at Kong Chiu Road, Pt1 Road, leading to the Eastern Cross Harbour Tunnel. There will be 7 PRH blocks to be built there. You are telling me that there would not be any impact. How can you tell me that there would not be any impact? You say it will be taken care of by another project. I don't think it is acceptable. Any response? Thank you, Chair. Just now, Mr. Leung was saying that there would be new development and the TIA would be taken care of in that project. Of course, I understand that at Pt1 Road, Cultural Road, and also the tunnel portal, that is a busy area. And in the Cultural Road project, a TIA will be done to see how the problem can be resolved. To be very frank, if we cannot solve the traffic problem, no blocks can be built. I heard you. But Mr. Jonathan Ho has already pressed the button. He's not going to let you go easily. And in the remaining process, we will still hold community liaison group meetings on a regular basis. If there will be works close to residents, we will liaise with them and communicate with them. Mr. Wu Chi-wai, second round, 4 minutes. Are you going to allow me to speak now? Sorry. It's not you. There are too many machines here. Mr. Jonathan Ho, I am not happy with the answer. Director, you have to understand why this link road is built. Because we saw in the TIA a few years ago that at the junction of Cultural Road, Pt1 Road, there is no saturation, and that is why you are building the road to divert vehicles to this junction. So vehicles do not have to use Cheng Kwan O Road. You are in fact directing the traffic to this junction. It was okay because the road was not busy. But now, there are new buildings which will be built next year. Your department is doing site formation, and the site will be handed over to the Housing Authority for building PRH. You say the TIA will be handled by the smaller project, but that smaller project is exactly going to block this junction. Now that you build this road, can you still achieve your original purpose? Director. Thank you. In fact, the planned projects have been included into the TIA. In other words, the TIA already includes planned projects. You mean a few years ago you already planned for housing development at Cultural Road, Pt1 Road? Mr. Ho is questioning whether this site has been included in your undertakings a few years ago. It is not that he doesn't trust you, he just doesn't know whether it has been included. Chairman, if you look at TIA report, para 16, this has been factored in. Thank you. Mr. Wu Chi-wai is not here. Mr. Eddie Chu, the fourth round, 2 minutes. It's your turn. I have 2 brief questions. Number 1, the TIA from the Bureau is such that entire pages can be blocked. Those are the TPEDM statistics and sums done on the basis of TPEDM. I understand that in March 2017, the Planning Department already made public the TPEDM. I'd like to know why it is still blocked. Can we have a version where this is not blocked? Second question. 9,630 units. How many people will be housed there? Any figures? Director. First question. Last year, the Planning Department released new figures. What we have covered are old figures, which are still relied upon in the TIA for making projections. Therefore, they have still to be blocked. But it doesn't mean that now that we have new figures, the old figures are superseded, because the new figures, if I remember correctly, are such that we have put the figures for 454 areas into 20-odd areas. So there is no question of the old figures becoming invalid. Thank you. What about population? Any figures? Thank you, Chair. There will be 200-odd units more, and we suppose each unit houses 2.7 persons on average, and there will be 500 more people. I thought that we should have a break after passing this item, but I think there's still some time to go. I will now suspend the meeting for 5 minutes.